Freddy Krueger here, and you're listening to Mike the Birdman and the rest of the crew this week in Geek.net.
Who disrupts my coronation?
Everyone has been destroyed because of this freak. I won't allow it! These babies just saved this lame death party!
What's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, and well, it is good to be back on the show. It is the month of October. Spooky season has begun. Pumpkin spice lattes are everywhere. You can't escape them. Girls are, for some reason, dressed like Han Solo. It's okay. But I'm not alone as I trek through our welcome back show for October. I'm joined with my compatriot, my companion, if you heard our Starfield review yesterday.
Alex, the producer. I was going to make some pumpkin spice joke, but I don't have the energy.
That is okay, because, hey, I have yet to have my first pumpkin spice latte of the month, but maybe I'll remedy that after the show. So, yes, guys, we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. We've got a lot of reviews to talk about, some news. I guess to talk about the big elephant in the room, the writer's strike is over. Go team. Kind of surprised how quickly... And I mean by quickly, once the contract language was down, that the writers got everything that they wanted. So super happy for all my friends out on the East and West Coasts in Hollywood, and glad we can start getting back to work.
I think late night's back this week already.
I think so. I think Jimmy Fallon or somebody's back with like a whole host of really, really big guests. For the actor strike, that'll get settled. My guess is a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that one's trickier. The writing one sucked in that they had to, they're dealing with AI and stuff, but the actors were in a more precarious situation because the studios wanted to own their likenesses forever, like slaves. Yeah. And it's like, no. Yeah. And then the studio's response was, yeah, we don't care. We're going to do that. Yeah. It's like, what?
Yeah. So
what now?
So we will be following that story, obviously, when it breaks. But as we most often do, we talk about what has been going on in our lives over the last little bit. Myself, I took a little bit of a writing sabbatical. I've been writing for our friend and now frequent contributor to the show, Enrique Couto. I've been working for his podcast called Weekly Spookies, and I worked out a couple of stories for him. You should be able to hear one of those in October. And that's probably the longest thing I've written in a number of years. I think over 10,000 words. I've also been working, as you guys know, I've mentioned this during the summer, I'm working for Modifius as a freelancer. I am writing on Star Trek Adventures, and I'm working on my first draft of something. I'm just doing my high-level summary right now. I'm hoping to get that finished in the next couple of days and then get into the nitty-gritty of what I'm actually working on. I'm hoping to have a finished version by the end of the month. That is my goal.
I audibly heard the air quotes. Finished.
Yeah, it is so hard in some ways, and there's just some stuff I just can't talk about. Or at least I don't think that I can. But it's like you have to follow XYZ, make sure you follow XYZ, and it must follow such and such a format. And it's just going to be, I think what I'm going to do, as Aaron said, write the fluff, so get your ideas down, then work out the mechanics, then go back and correct it. Eventually it'll just work itself out. And thankfully I've got a really good line editor. His name is Jim Johnson. He oversees the entire Star Trek Adventures line, so I should probably drop him a line and say, hey, things are finally clicking along. I'm in fairly good health, which I guess I should talk about that in just a moment. So there is a not unrealistic possibility I may have to go for a minor surgery. What do I mean by that? So, if you guys remember, earlier this year, I received what was known as a pressure hematoma. And that happens when you put pressure on one part of your body for an excessive amount of time. You see it happen with a lot of people who are disabled. Sometimes it's bed sores. In my case, it's on my one heel that I have left because I use that to transfer my entire body weight to and from my wheelchair, going to the bathroom, etc., etc. And I have a blister on my heel, which is a huge blood blister. And unfortunately, there's a lot of blood byproduct stuck in the wound. I've been going to wound care, getting it looked at. There's no sign of infection, but I might need what's known as a surgical debridement, which is kind of how I lost my leg the first time. But fortunately, I've seen wound care people. They said there's no sign of infection. Looking so far so good. I see a specialist this week just to verify everything, and depending on what they say, I may have to go to the hospital, get it de-roofed, which means I would be extremely limited in what I can do for a little while, which means I might be off the show for another week.
We should also, before anybody gets scared, also,
yeah.
Last time when it happened and they debrided it, you ended up losing limb, you were already infected, and it was and you were just in overall significantly poorer health.
Yeah, exactly. So I really got to start taking better care of my health. So I've decided October is going to be clean living month. We're going to do what I did last time. I'm going to try and drop a bunch of weight again. I'm going to get back in the high protein, low carb, which honestly it's not that bad, all things considered. And the only night I'm allowed to have fun is when I go to hockey games. And if I go to the hockey game, I have to have my leg up. Which, speaking of that, I went to the hockey game. I'm now sitting really close to the Storm Trackers fan club, and I am covering it not just here on the podcast. I have moved on to a different outlet. Can't really say too much more until the ink is dry on that deal, but hopefully that'll work out fairly well.
Onward and upward, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Onward and upward, but it was a fantastic home opener. We won against my former hometown of Owen Sound 4-2, sold out crowd of, I think, 4,600 people plus. It was just an astounding night. I got to wear the jersey that I got last year that I got for the Indigenous organization, Anishinaabe Outreach. And it's got my name across the back. It's got this wonderful Indigenous artwork on it. I got a lot of compliments when I went down to the rink, and it was just amazing to be in that space, to be surrounded by fans. I met so many people. Actually, okay, so this happened. So the game's over, and if you follow my TikTok, which is at BirdmanDodd, I'm out there recording my thoughts after the game. And these kids come up. They're like, hey, can we say hi to the vlog? I'm like, okay, sure. And then after I'm done recording, some of the people that I'm with hear an older couple walk by. They're like, hey, oh my God, that's Mike. And I'm like, wait, what? And it's weird because I've gotten recognized for the podcast before. Now I'm getting recognized for TikTok again. I don't know. It's kind of a weird local celebrity thing because I get stopped for people who recognize me from the newspaper all the time, like easily twice a day. I'll get stopped.
Let's be honest. Most writers are very diminutive and they're not as big personalities as you project.
Yeah, and I guess having my face on almost every single article is, I guess, a big help in recognition. You're also like a walking advertisement. All of your wheelchairs covered in stickers. You're wearing your hats with all the buttons. You're out there. You do not disappear in a crowd. yeah, that would be putting it lightly. But yeah, it was just awesome to get kind of recognized for that. And then I guess finally for me, on Saturday was the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in Canada. If you want to find out more about my thoughts on that, you can go to my TikTok. I recorded a fairly lengthy video on that. I went to say Sacred Fire for a couple of hours, participated with various members of the community, and my commitment is to keep fighting the good fight, to just make sure that stuff like that never happens again, and just working within that progressive space to make sure that Indigenous voices are heard in every level of government, from the municipal, which is local, all the way to federal. And I'm very proud to be serving my community in that capacity. So that is what I've been up to. Alex, what about you, my friend?
Well, in the last week, other than finishing up a bunch of review stuff, I visited family, helped out with my mom, and we went through a bunch of photos. We're trying to go through my grandmother's stuff. Basically, she's, as I've talked about before, she's going into like long-term care, and we've got to determine what to keep, what not to keep for her, and as well as like boxes of photos. And when I say boxes, I mean like, like the long boxes for comic books, like 20 of those of photos. So we're determining, which ones are people that we know, which ones are people we care about, who is like anybody that we even possibly would have known. Some of these photos are like 110 years old.
Oh, wow.
Like there's, and so there's stuff from there. At the same time, my dad's doing the same thing for his side of the family. He's going to be digitizing a bunch of my grandma's photos on her side, because she's been living in a retirement home for a few years now, and they got all of her photos out of storage, and it's the same deal. That's the one where I sent you and Blair a picture, and it's a death photo, because that's something they did in Europe, where you take the picture of somebody who died, and like they would stage the picture, and then you'd send that out to the family. I guess if you couldn't be there. So that's interesting. We don't know who it is, and we don't know why we have this picture. As far as we can tell, it's not family, so we're not entirely sure. So that was interesting. But beyond that, I took my mom. Well, she actually really wanted to go see, so she asked me, "Would you please take me to go see The Creator?" That's that new sci-fi movie from the director. Was it Gareth Edwards? I think most recently the Godzilla movies, and was it Rogue One? I think.
Yeah.
Probably the best special effects I've ever seen.
Oh, wow.
And I'm saying of any movie ever. Like think like, what if you mixed Blade Runner with like Apocalypse Now?
Okay. Was this the movie that hired people to go into the crowd at NFL football games dressed up as the robots?
Maybe.
I think it might have been, yeah.
They filmed it all over Southeast Asia and like Thailand and places, and then they superimposed the special effects within the location shots. Nothing was shot on sound stages. Everything was on location.
Okay.
Best laser beams ever. Finally beats Terminator 2's future war scenes. Like I was sitting there and like, oh my God, it's so real. And there's been some discourse back and forth whether or not the plot is as good, or that it has the emotional resonance. It's good. It plot wise and acting, it's a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10. Special effects and immersion, it's like a 10. So
Wow.
definitely worth seeing in the big screen. It's also the first movie I've seen maybe ever in first run. It's 2.78 to 1. It's like ultra wide, like those movies from like the 60s, like Ben-Hur. So like in the theater, it's just this wide band. On your TV, you're going to have extra bars on top and bottom. It's definitely made for a cinematic experience. So highly recommend, if you can, go out and see it. Go out and see it, because we're not getting a lot of these like one-off sci-fi movies anymore that aren't based on any, major property. It's not a franchise picture. So, go out and see it.
One of the last things I saw at the theater, and this surprised me, so shout out to Amazon Canada for actually doing this. They showed the first 2 episodes of Generation V, which is the Boys spinoff. It takes place, I guess, after season 3, but before season 4, where the kids with powers go to this place called Godalkin University. and they had the first 2 episodes. They gave out free concessions. There was giveaways. Me and Blair were really close to winning. I think like a Godolphin University hoodie or something. We were just a couple of seats off. And that was really unexpected to see Amazon Prime screening things in Canada. I think they're doing something for Ahsoka as well for Disney Plus for the last episode. Because the last movie I saw before going to Gen V was Mutant Mayhem. So I'm really hoping to go out and see the creator when that.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can find some time to go see it in the next little bit.
I have a feeling it's going to have legs. It'll be in theaters for a little bit. So if you get a chance, I do recommend seeing it in theaters. But if not, definitely VOD.
Awesome. All right, guys. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about today here on the show. We have reviews all coming from Alex. I will be back doing review stuff next week. We are going to be talking about Disgaea 7, Vows of the Virtueless. We got Fate Samurai Remnant. And from our friends over at Funrise Toys, we're going to be taking a look at those Heroes in a Half Shell, TMNT, Mutant Mayhem. We have some really cool, I think, RC toys we will be talking about from these guys. But first things first, we are going to check out one of the games that I've always been curious about this series, but I've never quite checked out. Who knows? I guess I have 7 of them to get through. This is Disgaea 7, Vows of the Virtueless. We'll be back right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I've been Mike the Birdman. He's been Alex the producer. We'll be back, guys, right after this.
Our friends over at NISAmerica have sent a review copy of Disgaea 7, Vows of the Virtueless, for me to play on the PlayStation platforms. Now, this is a departure from the previous games in the series in that they're going for a more Eastern influenced, as in like Asian influenced world and lore. It's a bit of a break from everything that's been done before. They've made some changes, and I'll make this a quick review because the story is pretty good in this from what I've seen so far. I'm about 60 to 75% of the way through. Now, the real question is, can you ever actually truly beat a Disgaea game with how deep you can go into it with the mechanics? It is more of the same of what you like. They've tweaked things a little bit. It plays itself less than the last game, which was a complaint some people had. I kind of liked it, where you could just sort of let it go and level up and beat things on its own. There are aspects of that here. It's just not really as automated, so it's back to being a little more strategic in what you have to do with it. Audio wise, it is quite good. The voice direction is good. The music is pretty good. Visually, it's one of the better looking games in the series. Significantly different visual style, as I've mentioned earlier here. As far as what you're able to freely move a little more in the individual worlds and levels. There's a fairly decent tutorial, I guess, quest line that shows you how to play the game. This is actually a pretty good entry point if you haven't played any of the games in the past, and it's like you could sort of do a clean break to get into this without having to worry too much about previous lore or anything. But if you're a fan of the franchise dating back, 20 years plus, then you'll get a little more out of it that way. But, it's not daunting. It's not like trying to jump in midway into a series that's long running, that's too complicated. This has just the right amount of, hand holding at the beginning to get you into it. But you can sort of just skim by that if you feel like it. You can skip pretty much any piece of dialogue you want. The text is pretty easy to read on screen. There's some accessibility options, but not much. Just enough to get you going. It is something that probably plays best in a portable mode if you're playing it on like the Switch. But as far as playing it on the PlayStation 5, it runs like a breeze, zero glitches, zero hiccups. Load times are almost non-existent. It's pretty solid. If you were on the fence about it and you've liked the stuff that they've released in the past as far as just the game mechanics and everything that way, but were maybe concerned that it was getting a little bland when it comes to the visuals and the aesthetic and just the direction the series had taken, this is going in a completely new direction and should satiate those concerns. And for anybody new to the series, it's again a really good starting point. So I would say I recommend Disgaea 7 Vows of the Virtueless, but as we enter into the holiday season, if you're on the fence about it, maybe wait till there's a sale for Black Friday or something. Otherwise, if you're a super fan, I'd say pick it up right now.
The Prime Minister of Sweden visited Washington today, and my tiny little nipples went to France.
Gossip, rumors, panic in the streets. We're lucky.
This Week in Geek
News.
Hey guys, welcome back to here on ThisWeekInGeek.net, the podcast that has somehow survived for 16 years. We're old enough to get a driver's license. All right, so our first story this week comes courtesy of Superhero Hype, only on the Nerd News Network. And this story is kind of neat. So Patrick Stewart wants a Star Trek Picard movie. So Star Trek Legacy star Patrick Stewart is pushing Paramount to bring Star Trek Picard to the big screen. Speaking about the third and final season of Picard with Time magazine, Stewart shared his desire to bring Captain Jean-Luc Picard back to cinemas alongside the Enterprise crew from Star Trek The Next Generation. The catch is that Stewart wants something completely different from the previous movies featuring the TNG cast. Quote, I'm gently pushing Paramount to let us do one single Picard movie, not a Next Generation movie, as we've already done 4 of those, Stewart said. This would be an expansion and deepening of the universe as we've seen it in Star Trek Picard. I discussed this with Jonathan Frakes, Brent Spiner, and LeVar Burton, and they are all game. Stewart and the TNG cast headlined the Star Trek movies on the big screen beginning in 1994, Star Trek Generations. We saw Captain Picard have his long-awaited meeting with Captain James T. Kirk, William Shatner. Its follow-up, Star Trek First Contact, in 1996 was the biggest financial success of the franchise since 1986's Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, and earned praise for Jonathan Frakes' direction. The last 2 installments of TNG's were 1998's Star Trek Insurrection and 2002 Star Trek Nemesis saw diminishing box office returns as the popularity of the franchise became limited to hardcore Trek fans. Should a new TNG movie get made, Stewart wants Frakes back in the director's chair. And then they just kind of go into a little bit of kind of background about him and Frakes working together.
I don't know what he means by Picard series movie and not TNG. Like, does he mean the terrible first 2 seasons? I
kind of get what he means, and I was kind of thinking about this. I think it means he wants to maybe explore the relationship with Jack and Beverly and maybe Seven and all that. Maybe if they're going to set up Star Trek Legacy, would be a true passing of the torch. So we're not fighting the Borg. You could bring Q to the big screen. Maybe this would be the final test of humanity for Picard's, finally John Delancey has his out, which honestly, I think bringing him back as the season 3 Stinger, I think was kind of a bad choice personally. Cause I'm like, you had such an emotional moment. It was one of the few redeeming moments of Picard season 2. And I just think it was maybe a disservice, but if Delancey can bring the energy to the big screen, if you can set up a reasonable thing, sure, because now the Borg have finally been defeated. We don't have to worry about the changelings anymore, more or less. The Romulans are not even on the board anymore. So what's left in terms of big bads in Star Trek? You're not going to do the Klingons in Picard because you're just not. Maybe the Tholians, because we haven't heard about those guys since the original series. I don't know. What could you realistically do here?
The slug people from Conspiracy.
You could pull that off, but it would be such a hard thing to do.
And we've just done multiple seasons of different shows with conspiracies again.
You can't do the infiltration thing again.
Maybe if you do the Q thing, the movie, the teaser and the movie just starts with him going, Picard's going into, I don't know, his vineyard or something, right? Mm-hmm. And he's going to pick some grapes, and then he walks it back into his chateau, and as he walks in, it through the doorway it cuts, and he's now back in the Q court with all the with all the the jester weird looking people all yelling and yelling at him, and he's like, "What the hell is going on?" And then Q shows up again, who he believes is dead, and he's like, "The time has finally come for your judgment."
Yeah, exactly. And be like, I have judged you to be found wanting, but I find you an accessory to the crimes of Jack Crusher. Do I leave this plane of existence and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, like you could set that up and have it be a movie about them emotionally connecting, like show them actually becoming a family. And if they want to set up, Seven and Raffi and, the crew of the new Enterprise, I'd be fine with it. But the writing has got to be strong.
Do flashes of all the mistakes he made over the 7 years of the show. Anytime he made a mistake, and it all starts adding up. And then you can do flashbacks to things that happened between series. You film some new stuff with him, whatever, and have something there. But like, I don't know what else there would be for them to do with him, because all of their enemies, in quotes, have been covered, and you don't really do. They tried one-offs with Insurrection, and it sucked. Right?
Yeah,
so,
like that's why I'm saying, like, you could do maybe the Tholians, maybe the Iconians, a lot of Onions here, maybe something with the Orion Pirates, because we haven't really, the only Orion in Star Trek right now is Tendi, and all we know is Pirates bad. We've never really seen them on the big screen. That could be really cool. Maybe the Gorn. Why not?
well,
Gorn wedding.
Well, Gorn is Strange New Worlds. It's all season 3 is going to be about. So, maybe Andorians.
Yeah, like maybe the Federation kind of fractures, and maybe you could make a Star Trek diplomatic movie, and maybe that's what Q wants to test humanity on. Say, that's great. You can unite when there's a threat like the Borg or the Romulans, but how do you defeat the idea of your differences only bringing you together when someone comes to destroy you? You know what I mean? How do you unite? Could you reform the Federation if you had to, again, under the principles of it again, considering what you've all endured, considering you've gone through the Borg, the Dominion, a second Klingon civil war. There's so much. Yeah, I could see it working, but unless the writing is really strong, it would be a very talky movie. I mean, yeah, there'd have to be some action scenes in there, but I could see this if Paramount Plus really wanted to push it. They could say, "Okay, we're gonna do a movie. It'll be in theaters for a very limited time, and if you want to see the rest of it, it's gonna be on Paramount Plus." This would drive subs to the service, at least in small numbers.
Make it like a Star Trek experience where you see it in theaters, and like they pair it with you go to theaters, you watch a remastered 4K copy of Encounter at Farpoint, and then right after that's over, you get a little intermission where the cast and crew talk, and then bam, you watch this movie.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And Paramount Canada, we're just handing out ideas, just like we did to Microsoft and Bethesda in our Starfield thing. We're just full of ideas. Come talk to us. Contact, feedback, ThisWeekInGeek.net. Yeah, like honestly, this could be awesome. You want to do it while Stewart still can do this. Obviously, the rest of the crew is on board, or at least, Frakes, Spiner, and Burton. I can't imagine rather McFadden and Sirrett saying no, even if they wanted to have reduced roles. I can promise you they're not going to. People like Jerry Ryan and Michelle Hurd and all those actresses are not going to say no either for a chance to be up on the big screen to establish a new part of Legacy.
Just don't let him have any creative control over his character. We saw what happened in season 1 and 2.
Yeah, like it has to be, the script has to be so strong, because if this is going to be your final note as Picard on the big screen, that's an awful big ask, and that's such a risk with the IP finally.
Yeah.
I feel being so well respected again.
No bad French accents with painters hats on, okay?
Yeah,
when he was pretending to be the pirate.
Oh yeah, in like Oh yeah, when I think the episode was called like Stardust Rag or something, and 7 dual wielding phaser rifles like
Murdering
Call of Duty.
everybody for no reason. Yeah, we're not and
Yeah,
shooting people in the back to kill them.
yeah, like
Yeah, we're
let's
not
not go
doing
back to that.
we're not doing that. We'll do season 3. The worst episodes of season 3 are better than the best episodes of seasons 1 and 2. So
Yeah,
if you can bring that energy, let Jonathan direct, I'd be down for it.
yeah, same here. Like I want to see Captain Picard on the big screen one last time. I want to see it pass to a new competent crew. If we're going to see the Enterprise G, then let's do it right. Let's set it up and let's see what happens. All right, so our next 2 stories are linked, if you will. I know there's a term in the sequel trilogy called a Force dyad, which I have thoughts about that because I marathoned all 7 episodes of Ahsoka last night. And I'm very, very tired. But I'm very into Star Wars right now. So these 2 stories are very, very relevant. So this story comes courtesy of NintendoSoup.com. As soon as it stops giving me friggin' pop-ups. Okay, so a class action lawsuit has been filed against Asper and Saber Interactive over Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 DLC cancellation. A few months back, developer and publisher Saber Interactive announced they would be canceling the highly anticipated restored content DLC for Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords, much to the disappointment of fans. To recap, the restored DLC promised to add a number of cut features from the game's original release, including new dialogue and interactions, a bonus mission for fan favorite droid HK-47, as well as an updated ending. The presence of this DLC was a hot selling point for the Switch release prior to its launch, promising to finally give fans the complete experience they missed out on back in the day. Following the DLC's cancellation, a group of these fans have filed a class action lawsuit against Aspire and Saber Interactive. As detailed in the case documents, the fans have assert that they never would have bought the game had they known the DLC would have been canceled further down the line, and as a result, Aspire and Saber Interactive are legally obligated to provide refunds. Quote, in December 2022, defendants Asper and Saber advertised KOTOR to users of the video console Nintendo Switch as having never before released restored content DLC. Plaintiff and numerous other consumers were excited about the new content that the defendants claim was going to be, quote, coming soon. In fact, KOTOR sat at the top of Nintendo's eShop rankings. Plaintiff felt completely duped. In fact, Plaintiff did not even play KOTOR after purchasing it, instead choosing to wait until the restored content DLC was released. Although Asper and Saber Interactive did not offer any refunds following the cancellation, it is worth noting that they did offer compensation in the form of game keys for other Star Wars games that they published. Evidently, this group of fans felt this was not accessible. Whether or not this is enough for their lawsuit to go through remains to be seen. Now, I'm actually personally affected by this lawsuit because I was one of the first people to get one of the game keys from Saber and Asper. They offered you Star Wars Republic Commando. They offered you Star Wars Racer. And I want to say the first KOTOR and maybe something else, but I got Republic Commando for the Switch because I did buy Knights 1 and 2. I was playing through 1 earlier this summer, and then I got sidetracked with a million other projects. That always seems to happen. I personally think they've got a case here. I mean, whether they get anything other than, hey, here's your $30 back, who cares?
If it was in writing saying that that was a feature and it's not there, you can get your money back.
Yeah, like I hope companies, like, if you're gonna make a promise, do it. I'd like to know what reasons why this was cut. I mean, if it's they didn't want to go back and do stuff like that. Now, I know people on the PC side of KOTOR have restored the content in some capacity, but I know it's not like official or like anything. And the KOTOR games are pretty cool. Now, that being said, I played through the first game this summer. I got about 75% through it. It's okay. I mean,
it's really buggy on Switch.
I mean, like Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor are much better Star Wars. I guess they're different, but in terms of a Star Wars role-playing game, sure, it's kind of cool, but I've played better tabletop games. Again, if you want to yell at me, Mike at ThisWeekInGeek.net. It's like
what it did was it was the transition game. It is halfway between BioWare in the Baldur's / Neverwinter style, and it had the ship hub, the character development, loyalty missions, that sort of stuff that you would come to see in Mass Effect. It's smack dab in the middle. So it was fantastic for 20 years ago. But that doesn't mean anything nowadays, really, right?
Yeah, like it's fine. I mean, some of the loyalty missions are kind of cool. Like the last one I remember doing was Bastila's. Sorry, spoilers for a 20-year-old game where you run into Bastila's mom on Tatooine. Okay, cool. All right, that's kind of neat. I've spec'd up my character in a really odd way. I totally admit I use the Switch's cheats, which is I'm really glad how easily accessible those are, though I wish I could go back and respec my character, but I'm a monster and I'm fine with it. Some of the other characters, I think I'm going to do the Mando's missions next, and I think I did the Wookiees or the Twilight's missions before everything. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, again, it's a fine game. Maybe if I played it 20 years ago, I would have been like, oh my God, this is so cool. It's cool, but
I enjoyed it when I played it, but it's rough. And
yeah.
And the second game, interestingly enough, the one which made by Obsidian, obviously based on the same engine, while the story isn't as good as the first, which is sort of par for the course for Obsidian, the actual gameplay mechanics were better. So
Yeah.
it's cool, but like, is a 20-year-old game playing on Switch, and it shouldn't have been that hard for them to put the little bit of money and effort in that they needed to do that, to actually unlock that stuff, when it's what they advertised as the selling feature of the game.
Yeah, like guys, you really dropped the ball on this one. So hopefully we will find out more information as this lawsuit moves forward. Speaking of lawsuits and dumb crap happening around the Star Wars IP, this one is going to definitely have people asking questions. So this story comes courtesy of Gizmodo, but it has been covered by a number of different outlets. Knights of the Old Republic remake status in question after the trailer has been pruned. BioWare's 2003 game Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is one of the most well-known Star Wars video games to bear the franchise name, and players were delighted to hear it would be having a current gaming, or it would be coming to the current gaming generation. But much like the Star Wars Eclipse, whose existence had to be reconfirmed by developer Quantic Dream last week, the remake for KOTOR is now facing similar scrutiny. Earlier in the week, fans online realized the initial reveal trailer for KOTOR remake was marked as private on YouTube. What's more, previous social media posts from Sony console-wise, the remake is a PlayStation 5 exclusive, have been deleted. Even users were able to pull the posts via the Wayback Machine of their Google caches. When contacted for comments, Sony told outlets the removals were related to music licensing and call it, quote, part of normal business. We delist assets with licensed music when the license expire, but many have pointed out only the main Star Wars theme is used in the trailer, which is owned by Disney. Part of the reason for the concern on part of players can be owed to the fact of the state of the games industry right now. Asper, which has recently done remasters of various old Star Wars games, was initially on deck to create the KOTOR remake for a late 2022 release, but that work was put on hold last year when its pitch didn't fully land with Lucasfilm and Sony. Months later, it was reported that development had shifted to Saber Interactive, but both studios are owned by the Embracer Group, which has spent much of the summer closing studios and shuttering projects. Whichever studio ends up working on the game, it's believed the game will release around 2025 at the earliest, and that's if things go properly according to plan. All games can take years before they actually release under the best of circumstances, but the culling at Embracer in Star Wars general history with revealing and then canceling games hangs over the KOTOR remake in a different way. Yeah, I've got concerns if this is going to happen.
I will say this, now that it's a property that they need to go well, because Sony's footing the bill, and they've already lost a few big deals with Embracer, right? So they can't, if they lose this with Sony, and Sony's pulling stuff, but if they lose this deal with Sony and they cut ties, that means they'll never have a deal with Sony again when it comes to an exclusive deal where they're going to get that kind of money. And they're already making a couple games in conjunction with Microsoft. If they fuck that up, they're done. They've got, I believe it's Eidos Montreal is helping Fable get finished, I think. They're not the lead team, but they're helping them finish it. And Crystal Dynamics is, I think they took over 007.
I completely forgot that game even existed.
Yeah, the studio was in like horrible development problems, and I think that they handed the reins almost entirely over. And Crystal Dynamics is working on that, and I believe they're also working on the next Lara Croft for Amazon. So if they lose that deal, they're screwed. But what I see is either they give the project to another internal studio, not like Dambuster or one of those guys that worked on like Dead Island or something. They'll give it to somebody internal like that, or maybe even like Gearbox or something. If they do that, the game is going to be probably, if it's a smaller studio or a double A or single A studio, it's going to be something similar to the original games with a slightly updated style, maybe a little bit in the vein of like what we saw now with Baldur's Gate 3, because that's now the new hotness. Or, and this is what I think a lot of people are hoping, is they hand the reins over to their one of their two only AAA studios that they own. They really only own two. Like, I don't consider Gearbox a AAA studio.
Yeah, they're double A with the occasional AAA title that manages to trickle out.
Yeah, they're double A, and unless you consider Borderlands to be AAA, which I don't.
I do, but it depends on which one. Like, I consider Borderlands 2 much better than Borderlands 3.
And the same goes with what was the one that we played last year? The
Tiny
RPG.
Tina.
Yeah,
which was astounding, but nobody played it.
It was a double A. It was not a triple A game. But again, like it's they punch above the weight class. The two studios they have are Crystal Dynamics and Eidos. And if they were to announce, hey, here's a new trailer or here's another teaser and we're working on this, it's going to take till 2025. If it's Eidos Montreal, I'll take them doing a complete reimagining with new style and bringing it up to modern standards of KOTOR. Like, it's either that or Deus Ex that people want them to work on. So if you have to choose between them, I think at this point, as much as I love Deus Ex, I'd love to see what Eidos does with a AAA budget for KOTOR. They're the only studio that Embracer has, like them and Crystal, that could actually do it. Mm-hmm. And do it too. And I don't mean like that the other studios couldn't make a game. I just don't think any of the other studios they have the ability to make the game to Sony standards.
Yeah,
right?
It's such a beloved game. It's an amazing IP. You have to hand it to the right studio. It has to hit at least as good as Jedi Fallen Order. And that is a huge thing to say.
Yeah.
Is it going to be, and like even the Star Wars game that Ubisoft is doing, that looks cool, but again, it has to compete with Fallen Order and Survivor in terms of universal acclaim. And Respawn, that's a studio that did like Titanfall. So,
and if the Ubisoft title hits it out of the park, that's even more pressure to make the game good, right? Because then they have two pillars that they're standing up against.
Yeah, like it's going to be something astounding, or it's going to be, well, that was a wet fart that just didn't land. So what happens? Who knows? We'll definitely be following this as huge fans of the Star Wars IP. We'll find out. So, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of the Nerd News Network. Just kind of a smaller kind of news week. I mean, as we mentioned off the top of the show, there's not much more to say about the writer's strike, which me and Ken covered for the most part of August. What's going to happen with the actors strike? Ken is predicting it'll settle in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'm going to say mid-November. I imagine now that the writers have gotten their piece of the pie, the actor's going to say, look, if you can acquiesce to these demands, you have no reason not to help us. So I'm sorry, David Zaslav, you don't get another gold-plated house this year. It's
all going to depend on the ratings, because new shows started this week, and you know how many new dramas started this week?
Less than 10?
One.
Wow.
One network drama started, and it was something that was filmed last year. And some of the other networks are going to premiere shows that are new, in quotes, and they're Canadian shows from the January season on CBC and CTV, but being presented as new fall American shows. I don't think ABC has a single drama or comedy. It's all reality shows that don't have writers. And the other networks, like all the big heavy hitters like NCIS and that for CBS, there isn't anything. There's nothing coming. And if they start seeing that in October and November, if they see a dramatic drop in ad revenue because nobody's watching, they're going to panic and have to go back to talk, because movies can be pushed around. They can do that sort of stuff. But TV is more immediate. They need programming. But anyway, that's my little rant. Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen in the next couple of weeks for sure.
Yeah, and obviously we will be there to cover it. Obviously, we support all the unions that are demanding fair compensation for all the work that they do as creative people ourselves. We totally understand it, and we fully support you. So go get the bastards. So anyway, our next review will be coming up from Alex, and we are gonna be looking at Fate Samurai Remnant. And when we come back, we're gonna hit the weird news that happened around the world this week. One story is going to be really short, but we'll have a conversation about it. Definitely tied into what we've been talking about today. And then, you ever wanted to walk your emotional support lizard? Well, we'll talk about it. We'll be back right after this, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Our friends over at Koei Tecmo America sent a review copy of Fate Samurai Remnant. Now, this is a new action RPG in that franchise that I'm not overly familiar with, but I had heard of in the periphery, and it's actually pretty interesting. The graphics are quite good. I'm playing it on the PlayStation 5. It's not like AAA budget, but for like anime style RPGs, it is a level above what I had seen previously on last generation, which is good. So it doesn't feel like it's something that, was just ported last minute over to PS5. It has a pretty good cast of characters. Story's good. I'm not going to go into the story. No spoilers here for this quickie review. But I will say that there is a fair amount of dialogue to get through. Not overly hard. There's an autoplay option. There's fast forward options. You can go back in the log. You can pause and skip anything. It's not one of the games where you're forced to read the dialogue the first playthrough or anything. There are a multitude of characters that get introduced that are pretty neat overall. There's a diverse amount of character archetypes in this, which is something that is good and needed in an action RPG. I find that sometimes these games can kind of blend together, and I'm not having that issue playing this at all. Audio is fantastic. It has good spatial audio when it comes to surround. Playing with headphones, it's nice and crisp and clear. There is great writing in the game. The characters have a lot of heart. There's a lot of flashy combat with pretty good controls overall. There's a lot of strategy involved the farther into the game you get. I'm about 75 to 80% of the way through. I haven't done a complete 100% playthrough yet, but I've got enough that I have a good feeling that it's going to be landing the ending quite well, and I'm not going to be let down. There are some pacing issues early on where it feels like, hey, we're rolling ahead, and then it sort of just has a bit of a lull. So there's a fair bit of like corridor running for some of the missions, which does date the style a little bit to something you would have seen on like the PS3, PS4, but it is minimal. It's not anything that's going to be like game breaking or deal breaking when it comes to immersion with you. That's just going to be something that might bug some people. It was okay with me, but it is something that I noticed. Overall, it has a good story. It has pretty rewarding combat overall, good characters. It's a good place to jump into. You don't have to have known anything about the franchise in the past, as I really didn't, to jump in and just have a pretty good time overall. I'd say pick it up. It might be a bit of a sleeper hit of the year as we enter into the fall, Broketober, November period. In a year that had a lot of RPGs, this is one that you don't want to sleep on.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do!
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
All right, guys, welcome back to ThisWeekInGeek.net. It is now time to talk about the strange and unusual things that have happened around this plane of existence we happen to call planet Earth, and where we currently exist. Or do we? Or is this a whole simulation? You'll never know. Anyway, I'm Mike the Birdman. He's Alex, producer. And, well, this comes courtesy of the TSA, everybody's favorite agency in the government, I'm sure. And this is a policy that has been updated regarding lightsabers. Well, you can carry this in your carry-on bag. That's cool. So if you're coming from Galaxy's Edge or from a galaxy far, far away, that's fine. You can also put this in your checked bag. Okay, great. Now, it says under its heading, sadly, the technology doesn't currently exist to create a real lightsaber. However, you can pack a toy lightsaber in your carry-on or checked bags. May the Force be with you. Now,
and this is on the official. This is their official statement on lightsabers,
which is astounding because I seem to recall a couple times in the last couple of years, especially when Galaxy's Edge opened, that people were having lightsabers either taken or confiscated or something. Actually, Alex, I don't know whether you remember this. Do you remember when they had the little Pepsi or Cokes or Sprites that looked like thermal detonators? And they look like those little grenades from Star Wars.
Yeah.
I think someone gave one to me years ago, but I
remember
asking.
Those are a little harder to carry on.
Well, it's because they're like a thing meant to hold like pop. But at the same time, I remember asking the person who gave it to me, like, how did you get this through security? And I think they said to me at the time the TSA agent just wasn't a douchebag. But I seem to recall a number of people getting these confiscated just because of the batteries, for one, because if you carry batteries on an airplane, you have to take them out of the device because they can explode at like a certain height or something like that.
It's like lithium's over a certain size you can't take. And and like it has to be a certain capacity and a certain type. I can't remember which one.
Yeah, and obviously with, after the terrorist attacks of 2001, to bring this a little bit serious, explosive devices, people were looking for them everywhere. People were looking for them in your shoes. The last time I flew was back in 2014, so almost 10 years ago now. When I was in the wheelchair at the time, just because I wasn't walking too good, I had to stand up and get fully inspected. And let's just say the TSA agent wasn't exactly gentle.
I thought you were just going to say I had to be fully inserted into the chair. But like, what is how does that, the chair hold you in place? What's going on?
It was really weird. Like I had to walk through the actual metal detector and the TSA agent was grabbing places. I'm thinking, we're not that intimate, pal. It was weird.
Which is funny because they can't do that anymore.
Yeah, and I was flying Air Canada. No, yeah, I was flying, what's it, Air Canada? Yeah, I think I was flying Air Canada or Delta, flying from Toronto to Vegas. And then when I came home, we flew from Vegas to Buffalo or something like that. Or did we do? I don't fucking remember. Either way, it sucked. But yeah, so I'm really glad to see the TSA have a sense of humor about this. So if you're going to Galaxy's Edge anywhere on this planet, if you happen to visit there, you can fully bring your customizable lightsaber from there. I'd actually be really curious if they're going to be doing the new lightsabers from Ahsoka, like Balin's or Ahsoka's or Sabine's / Ezra's. Wouldn't surprise me. I'm hoping to go at some point. If I ever get that fuck you money, I'll figure it out. But anyway, so thank you, TSA, for having a little bit of a sense of humor in these certainly interesting political times. All right, so our next story, as I alluded to in our last conversation before the break, This story comes courtesy of NPR, and I'd like you to talk to Wally, the emotional support alligator who went to see the Phillies, and then he went viral. An emotional support alligator walks into a ballpark and is asked to leave. And that's the story that made headlines in recent days, thanks to a series of viral photos and videos showing Wally, a 6-foot-long, 55-pound alligator wearing a harness and a leash, and his human companion outside Citizens Ballpark during a Phillies game on Wednesday night. As soon as this would stop giving me, there we go. Okay, quote, but it's not the whole truth. Owner Joey Henney told NPR, quote, "We were not there to go to the ball game," said Henney 70. "We were there to meet the players, and what was what we went there for, and I was invited. I didn't just show up." To understand the backstory, you do need to know that Wally's myriad of local admirers and online fans do just how beloved this 8-year-old alligator is already. Wally has more than 114,000 followers on TikTok, another 27,000 plus users on Instagram. He's gone viral before, including joyfully splashing around in a fountain at the Philadelphia's famous Love Park last summer. He's posed for photos at City Hall with the mayor of York, visited seniors at a local retirement home, and he was the visual reference for the alligator Loki in the hit Disney Plus series Loki. That's really cool. Quote, "He's actually world famous," Henney said, which is now he scored an invite to meet the Phillies. Wally only goes where he's invited, as Henney explains that one of Wally's fans who visits him regularly from New Jersey is also a big-time Phillies fan and happens to be friendly with some of the players and their wives. After hearing her rave reviews, the team invited Henney and Wally to Philadelphia, which is about 2 hours away from where they live in Harrisburg. Henney said they were there not to watch the game, but to meet the players. But by the time they got to the stadium, the players were already preparing for the game, said Henney. Since they were already there, his friend figured she'd buy them tickets to watch, but she didn't ask about the rules for emotional support animals. Quote, we were there standing in line, and they said, I can't take Wally because they only allow service animals. And I said, okay, I respect what your rules are. There was no arguing. There was no nothing. Citizens Bank policy prohibits all animals other than guide dogs, service animals, or other service animals in training. NPR has reached out to the Phillies for comment. Henney said he emphasized he wouldn't have shown up with Wally unannounced. Quote, I don't go anywhere. Wally's not invited. They do get invited to lots of other places like restaurants and malls. He said he's been missing a lot of the headlines about this week's outing and wishes people wouldn't be so quick to criticize. Quote, they think I just take him randomly to a ball game, he said. I'm not even a baseball fan. I don't watch baseball. I don't go to other games like that. He prefers the York Revolution, which is a minor league team, in part because they're fans of Wally. And he noted many people at the stadium were happy to see Wally. They gave him hugs and kisses. He said it is not an unusual reception for the alligator. And he said the Phillies do want Wally to come back and meet the players on the field, likely during an off-season game. He's waiting for them to call him. Whenever they set it up, they'll invite us. We'll go back, he said. Wally attracts attention wherever he goes, and it's hard not to, seeing as he's the first reptile to legally be certified as an emotional support animal, according to Henney. It might be because he walks on a leash. It might be because of the red harness with his name on it, and it definitely has something to do with the fact that his mouth isn't taped shut, because he doesn't bite. I've been handling gators for 30 years. I've never met a gator who will not bite you when you close their mouth, Henney said. In fact, he compares Wally to living with a weighted blanket who loves to be held, give hugs. He's especially partial to chin rubs. Henney said he didn't set out to own a pet alligator, let alone an emotional support reptile. He works in wood crafting and rescues reptiles on the side, which is how Wally came to be in his life in about 18 months. When I rescue them, they're not my pets. I try to help them get into good health, but Wally became special. He became really attached to me and really super close, so I kept him. Henney said he's spoken to local and national news outlets over the years about how their bond continues to strengthen, and then this is almost over. Wally has helped him navigate depression, especially difficult moments like when the deaths of several family members in 2017 and radiation treatment for prostate cancer last year, which he underwent with Wally by his side. He told NPR he initially thought everybody was nuts when the doctor diagnosed getting him registered as an emotional support animal several years ago, but he decided to go through with the certification process, and he hasn't regretted it. Quote, it means a lot to me, and he said, actually, he means as much to me as my children. It's kind of cool. It's really weird. I'm just looking at some of the photos, seeing him hugging.
Yeah, something that's a cold-blooded animal that has they don't have the ability to emote empathy the way that mammal pets do.
I don't know. I've seen lizards and snakes take to people in
It's
really unusual ways.
They're always wild. Like they
I
will
see it
attack.
as a case by case basis. Like
I,
looking
yeah, I'd want to have somebody who is like a zoologist explain that that's actually a safe animal to have around.
Yeah, like for me, the fact that his jaw's not taped shut and the fact that an alligator's bite strength, at least from what I remember seeing recently, they could snap the human femur in two. I mean, now he's only 55 pounds, but that's 55 pounds of pure muscle. And,
Yeah.
should something happen, I mean, I wouldn't want to see Wally get taken down by the cops because I've seen emotional support dogs get shot for a lot less.
Wait a minute.
Didn't
Don Johnson have a pet alligator in Miami Vice, the TV show, who guarded his houseboat?
I want to say yes. I seem to recall something like that, actually. Yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, it's cool that this...
It's a Florida thing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that this animal is so friendly and he poses for pictures. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It would be kind of neat to get a selfie with a smiling alligator. In fact, in one of our private chats, I just sent a picture where there's a guy fighting an alligator over a piece of pizza and he literally drop kicks it.
Oh God! Well,
yeah, Alex, you can look forward to that later.
I'll tell you this right now. In Miami Vice, there was a pet alligator named Elvis,
I think I remember this actually,
and he was chained up to the boat with a big chain. But yes, so I was not crazy.
You are
Episodes
not
appeared
crazy.
in various seasons 1 and season 2 episodes. I guess after that they were just like, maybe we shouldn't have the gator.
Yeah, so that's maybe a risk to people on set. And continuing with our animal news, Alex sent this story in this week. This comes courtesy of abc.net.au. Motorists fined after dog seen behind wheel of speeding car. Police in Slovakia find a man whose dog was seen sitting behind the wheel of a speeding car. The speed camera photo, which is posted by police on Facebook, appears to show a canine in the driver's seat of a Skoda. Quote, police officers could not believe their eyes, the post said. Instead of the photo of a driver, a brown hunting dog was smiling beautifully into the camera. Police said they stopped the, quote, irresponsible dog
actually
owner.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it looks amazing. Like, I'm hard pressed to believe this isn't AI generated or like a Photoshop of some kind. But police said they stopped the, quote, irresponsible dog owner for the speeding in the village of Sturzy, a northeast of Slovakia's capital, Bratislava. The 31-year-old man claimed his pet, Havino, I suddenly jumped into his lap while driving, but police said the footage showed this was not the case as there was no sudden movements of the car. Officers fined him on the spot for violating traffic regulations. Police said, quote, it is not clear whether the fine was issued for speeding or for failing to secure the dog while driving. Police urged motorists to secure their pets safely in their cars. Even a small animal can endanger your life and health while driving, police said. Yeah, that's true. My mom, my grandmother used to have her Bichon Frise, and it used to be like attached to her. This was a really well-behaved dog, but when I was in the car, it always made me really nervous because she would sit, and she was a little old lady, and the dog would sit behind her head on her shoulders in the car.
Oh,
and the dog is not secured by a leash. The window is down, and I always thought in the back of my little 10-year-old mind, what's to stop the dog from freaking out if we stop suddenly, jump out the window, or to scratch her and distract her?
This is where your mind is very different than mine, my friend. When you were saying that, my first thought was, when I was 10 years old, if I had seen that, my first thought would have been, I wonder what would happen if I just pushed the dog out the window.
God, no.
Not thinking the dog would be hurt. Like if you're going over a bridge, like, would she dive into the water? Would grandma notice?
But I've also seen I've also seen big dogs sit in their owners' laps when they drive. That's just not safe.
I had friends who I was like, this is not safe. They had an SUV, like an older style, like Ford Expedition, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a Newfoundland dog. one of those ones that's like 150 pounds.
Yeah.
It's basically a horse. It would sit in the middle to back seat, and it would still be able to lean up with its head and rest on their lap. And I'm like, how are you shifting gears? With it, like, and the argument, I guess, is the dog is so big, there really isn't like a dog carrier for it. It doesn't exist, right? You'd have to like fence off, but like at that point you should like fence off the area or something. Because I was thinking like all it takes is that dog to go bark once, and if it bumped into you, it could knock your arm and you could go swerving over to the side of the road. Like the only time we ever did that, we ever drove with animals like that, is when we first had our cats. We tried to keep them in their little cat carrier, but we had to take them out to feed them when we were driving on the road, and they decided to squirm out and decided that they were going to fall asleep on the dashboard. On top.
I've seen that.
And that was like, they were tiny, and they like, we weren't going to let them crawl. Like our fear was they were going to get below like my dad's feet, and he would like accidentally stomp on them, or they would get caught behind one of the pedals. But no, they just decided to lay, curled up on top of the dashboard and just slept there for like 2 hours while we drove. And it's one thing, like two little small kitties, but like a dog is dangerous to do that with because they're hyper.
Yeah, like my friend's emotional support animal, Ralphie, Jordan's dog, extremely well behaved, loves car rides. It knows enough. It sits in the back seat. It's got its blanket. She sits there and is remarkably well behaved. I've never seen Ralphie in the front seat. And that's a safe way to transport your animal. Obviously, the crate is the best in some ways, but if you trust your animal enough and the animal is well behaved, you leave it in the back seat. You never bring it in the front seat.
And there's even like, there's like car seats for kids and babies. They
make
ones.
I thought there's one for dogs, right?
There are for like Chihuahuas and like for very small dogs. You can like clip them and play. Like basically their harness like that they have just clips into the seat so that they can't move too far away from the seat.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do that. You could totally do that.
I mean, again, it's still pretty weird to see this photo. Like, it's
just like in Stargate SG-1 when they did their episode 200, where they had like all the funny flashes and flashbacks to things that happened. And when Jack decided that he got turned invisible, and
he had the dog drive the golf cart or whatever.
He was driving the car into the base, but put the dog in the front seat. just playing pranks, and it looks like a very similar dog, and like the dog drove up, and like the gate guard is like, the fuck. And so that's what it made me think of right there. It's just like, and I tried looking at the picture here, and I still can't see the driver's arms or anything. It looks pitch black behind the dog, so it must have been like quite scary to the traffic police seeing that.
Yeah, like it is created so perfectly. Like I said, I really wondered if it was AI. It's too bad that it's a traffic camera and it isn't at a higher resolution, because this would be an awesome thing for like a t-shirt or a postcard or like even like a wallpaper on a computer or a phone. It's pretty funny. So that's going to do it for this edition of the weird news, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net. We have one final review for us this week, and it's going to be something a little bit kind of fun. So this is from our friends over at Funrise Toys. We're going to take a look at some of their licensed toys they got from TMNT, Mutant Mayhem, which you can stream on Paramount Plus right now or buy on VOD. So check out these Heroes in a Half Shell, and maybe you'll buy something cool for your kids this holiday season. We'll be back, guys, right after this, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Earlier this summer, the animated feature film Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem came out to wide success, both critically and as far as in the box office is concerned. I ended up seeing it with my brother, and we were pleasantly surprised. It was like we were transported back to being kids again, although in this like cool, almost claymation-esque looking CGI animated feature. And it was probably probably the best like adaptation as far as animated movie goes that they've ever done. And to coincide with that movie release, there is a new line of toys, actually a bunch of different ones, released from Funrise Toys. And we had a chance now to check some of them out. I was sent a box with a few different samples of each, and this is going to be just sort of a quick review, very briefly, only because It's more like we're going to be including these probably in our holiday gift guide with a little more detail and pictures and talk about them and so on a little bit down the line. But because it's timely, the toys are out now. I wanted to make sure we had a chance just sort of to briefly go over what's out there, because it's been a while since something in that line has interested me. I know Birdman has been a big collector of like higher end figures and stuff, but I'm always more of the interested in like the tech end of things, and some of these are pretty cool because some are like traditional ones where, like toys where you pull them back and it builds up friction, and then you release it and it's like a little car that moves forward. Think of like the old dinky cars that used to do that. And then there's also some remote controlled RC vehicles, or I guess it's not really a vehicle, I guess it's a turtle. So I had a chance to look at a couple things. There is the micro shell racers. They're about the size of like a Hot Wheels or a Micro Machines, and then they have like a little base that you stand them on. You press buttons on them and it shoots them out ahead. And they're also like they're 2.4 gigahertz controlled remote control, so like miniature tiny racing, I guess almost like Hot Wheels, but not Hot Wheels, if you know what I mean that way. Those are actually pretty darn cool. There's also the switch kick skaters. These are the ones that you pull back on like the traditional toys, and they'll zoom forward. And then there is also a larger figure, which is the Super Shredders, they're calling them. And those, again, you pull back on, you pull back to build up friction, and you'll release and it will skate forward. But there's also a button on the back of each of these characters, and that button does an action move, so it'll like raise Leonardo's sword and slash. So it's like a combination of a couple different style of toys. And the final one that I was sent to check out, and we'll put it in our gift guide as well, is the Half Pipe RC, which is another remote controlled 2.4 gigahertz vehicle. This one's a little larger, and it comes with a bunch of little accessories. So it's kind of neat that they are making these RC controlled characters that are a lot smaller than I remember from when I was a kid, like to the point where they're like the size of like G.I. Joe size, if that makes sense, but then you can still control them with the remote control. And then of course, for instructions on how to use everything, it's all done through a QR code now. So pretty neat stuff. A pretty decent variety of toys coming out in this line. And I've had maybe a little bit now to sort of package and play with them, and that the packaging is pretty cool. These are not like high-end collector's items. These are meant to be played with, and I'll be definitely sharing them with some of my younger cousins and some family friends that have kids, and see what they think, and we'll talk about it a little more when we get to our holiday gift guide.
Leave me alone, geek boy.
All right, guys, we are back here on This Week in Geek to close up the show. So, obviously, big thanks to all of our friends who provide us reviews for this show. We took a look at Disgaea 7, we looked at Fate Samurai, and we also just took a look at some cool toys from the TMNT Mutant Mayhem movie, which released earlier this summer. Coming up on the show this month, a lot of horror-themed content. I recorded a show with Enrique Couto from Welcome to Primetime, a Freddy's Nightmares podcast. I think Alex has our Slumber Party Massacre thing that I recorded with Enrique and his co-host David Louis Denoyer, where we're going to talk about those movies. We also have our annual Halloween special, which I recorded with Enrique and James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd, on the Hammer series of horror movies. That'll be edited later this week. It should be out towards the end of the month. Me, Alex, and Aaron should be talking about some more horror movies on Loose Cannon and Future Imperfect to kind of keep the spooky vibe going. I'm working on something with David and Enrique for anthology horror movies. We're going to be talking about Tales from the Hood. We're going to be talking about Tales from the Dark Side and the Twilight Zone movies. And then maybe we'll kind of touch on like more recent hits like VHS and stuff like that. And that should be a fairly fun show. And then
on the Earth versus Soup front, over the course of the month, we have from Aaron and Darlene, The Devil Bat, King Kong versus Godzilla, Kronos, and Teenagers from Outer Space to round out October.
So it should be a fairly good time here on the show as we race through Broketober. We are currently reviewing. Can we mention what games we're reviewing? I think so.
I believe so. I'm pretty much caught up. But as of this show, but I will have a review, maybe extended. I'm not sure if it's going to be a full prototype review or if it's going to be a review on next week's show of Baldur's Gate 3. We've got some movies and stuff as well, and you and I, let me just double check if we can actually talk about it.
Yeah, I know I'm talking about a yearly release coming up really, really, really soon that will be coming up later in the month. Trust me, you're going to want to hear that review when I get that ready. I think I can officially talk about it around the 18th. I'm taking a look at Forza, I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to say. If not, it comes out, so I can't say anything more than that. And I'm looking at some other games. So yeah, lots of good stuff coming up here on the show. Trust me, you're going to want to stay tuned. I got more RPGs from Renegade. We should be expecting a package from Wizards of the Coast for the latest update for the Fandelver thing that they did. We're just waiting to find out where our packages are. So hopefully they weren't taken by porch pirates or, mutants. And other than that, we just got a lot of good stuff to talk about here on the show. So be sure to check out our past catalog.
So, yes, we are allowed... wait a minute. Yes, okay. Just read a document. We are allowed to talk about one game that you and I are going to be reviewing, probably do a review together on, and that is from Ubisoft.
Assassin's Creed Mirage. Yes, I will be digging into that later on this week. I'm a huge fan of the Assassin's Creed property, so we'll be looking forward to checking out the latest adventure there. So lots of good stuff. Like I said, guys, please keep it locked to ThisWeekInGeek.net as we continue offering content through the month of October as we sprint towards the finish. That is going to be our holiday gift guide, which will be airing as of this recording date. I just want to double check the day on this. You can find our holiday gift guide will be airing on probably Friday, December 8th, or at the very latest Monday, December 9th, probably on the 8th, but we'll also have coverage from the Jeff Keighley show, which always happens around this time of year. So we'll be talking about that whenever that airs. Hopefully we'll see some really cool trailers, first reveals, and that's always a fun show that I look forward to doing literally the morning after. So we will be talking about that whenever that happens. Plus, we'll have some more prototypes, as Alex was mentioning. We got a lot of good stuff. Hopefully, we'll be talking about Call of Duty like we do every year. And I'm sure there'll be other big reviews because I know Spider-Man's coming out. Hopefully, Nintendo sends us Detective Pikachu, Mario. I don't know how I'm going to find all this time.
Detective Pikachu is this week. This is Broketober is already starting.
Nope. Friggin' remind me. On that note, we are out of here, guys. So for ThisWeekInGeek.net, we have been
Alex, the producer.
I've been Mike the Birdman saying be excellent to each other. We'll talk to you again next time. And if you see me down at the Sleeman Center, come out and say hi. All right, guys, we'll see you next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
Lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.